Welcome everyone to today's panel discussion on the topic, is EdTech just about bringing traditional education online, or is it creating a whole new ecosystem? This event is brought to you by IIT Guwahati in association with 100x Entrepreneur. I am Aditya, Secretary at IIT Guwahati. We are a community that believes in fostering.
So I am Akshat Gupta, Events and Outreach Head at IIT Guwahati. Like he was talking about ESL, we are a community that believes in fostering the spirit of entrepreneurship among students and conduct various events throughout the year, like pitching competitions, product hackathons, workshops, webinars, lecture series at both institute and national level. So let us welcome our panelists, starting with Ms. Radhika Agrawal, who is part of the investment team at Blume Ventures. She co-wrote the report Blume's EdTech Thesis 2020 that provides a holistic view of the EdTech space in a detailed manner. Next up, Mr. Kunaal Satija, founder and CEO at EduRev. EduRev was a part of Y Combinator's winter batch of 2020. It was also selected in Facebook's FB Start program and Amazon's AWS Start program, and also received the Best App Award by Google Play Store. Mr. Mohammed Hisamuddin, founder and CEO at Entri. Entri was also selected in Facebook's FB Start and Amazon's AWS Start Accelerator program. Thank you all, including the audience, for joining us on a Sunday evening. Aditya has prepared a bunch of questions for all three of you, after which we'll proceed to audience's questions. Audience, please put your questions in the question tab located at the right side of the screen. We'll take the questions once the discussion is over. Now, this COVID-19 has changed a lot of things, as we know, across the globe in all the sectors. And EdTech sector has also been affected a lot by this. So we would like to know how your companies have been affected by this, how your work life has changed, and now that we all are working from home, so how it has affected our work and like other things related to it. So let us start with Radhika, followed by Kunaal and Hisam.
Yeah, sure. I think first off, thank you for organizing this on a Sunday as well, and thanks for having us. Looking forward to the discussion. COVID's changed a lot of things. It's been now almost say 8 months, 7-8 months. I think the biggest changes for us have of course been working from home with a very small team at Blume. We're just about 15-20 people. Most VC funds are really small teams. We're like a startup ourselves, except we don't scale in terms of team number. But I think pre-COVID, we were all very, very well knit. Work across 3 cities, but we're constantly traveling. I'd be traveling every alternate week, meeting pipeline companies, portfolio companies. And in the process, you also get to meet people in the ecosystem and build just slightly stronger, more personal equations with everyone. And you also become friends with everyone at work and not just have a very, very professional equation. Those are very hard to build on Zoom. So I was, even with pipeline founders, so many personal aspects of things that you maybe don't overtly assess, but you notice about your founders. You don't get to on Zoom. So even things like do they prefer coffee over beer, beer over coffee? Those are very interesting nuances that help you build long-lasting equations with founders, which are important, which we can't anymore. So I think that's one big change of just not as coherent, not as strong interpersonal relationships post-COVID. I think my productivity, of course, is shot up because I'm not spending 2 hours on the road every day. But let's see how that goes back when I'm back at work, perhaps in a couple of months. Yeah, that's how it's changed at Blume.
Great. I think Radhika summed it up pretty well. I think we all are facing the same thing more or less. I think in terms of work, being in EdTech, that has been a blessing right now, and we have grown like pretty crazily in the last 3 to 6 months. I think and I think this has changed EdTech for good. I think a lot of things which were closed in the past, which people thought, hey, this is not how education is done. So all those possibilities are now on the table. So that's how I think it is impacting us positively on the work side. In terms of the work life, I think we have gone more productive, but for sure, I think it's much simpler. We're working day in, day out. As a founder, I think I appreciate that and enjoy the whole thing out and that we are super effective and all that. But at times, I think the employees are not having, the most, the healthiest mental state to go through. They are, not like super happy and excited about office not being there. So I think that is definitely a problem, and I think this would affect the team bonding in the longer run. So like in the short term, I think we would not see the problems coming up, but I feel that in the longer run, to build up a better, stronger team, the offline environment is a bit more effective, and we're thinking that maybe something like a hybrid of offline plus online is something that we would go, but it would be reverse, like like 2 days in the office and 5 days from home, something with those lines. And so yeah, I think that's pretty much how it has been at EduRev.
Yeah, sure. So I completely agree with Radhika and Kunal. I mean, like some really relevant points that applies to us as well. But like first of all, I think specifically talking from an edtech startup perspective, I think we've been very fortunate plus grateful of being one of the only few sectors that has been like, positively impacted because of COVID. So that has been a real big blessing. So obviously the numbers have like spiked really nicely. I mean, starting this year, we were at like 1.5 million users. Over the last 6 to 7 months, very close to 4 million users right now, adding up from like 5,000 to 6,000 users every day. Right, we're adding 10,000 to 15,000 users every day right now. Even like revenue has spiked like 3 times what we're doing 6 months back. And like one thing that really helped us as well is like the hiring part. I mean, we were like around 75, between 75 and 90 people when the year started. We are already at we crossed 200 last month. So that has. Since we are a local language product, we wanted the team is spread out across India, across different languages. And one of the challenges pre-COVID was hiring, right? I mean, so we had to have like local offices, etc. But once everyone started working from home, the hiring part like really became pretty straightforward for us. I mean, like we were able to hire a lot of people where we wanted in different areas of India. So that kind of accelerated, and as well as I mean, as Kunal pointed out, I mean, the work from home. Shift from work from office as like kind of the work-life balance I think has kind of got affected, at least not in the beginning. I mean, last 2-3 months when like people continuously work for from home for the last 7 months, it started taking a little toll, but like doing process changes inside Entri which might cover that as well. But one thing that we've done over the last 3 months is like the team leaders come to office and work from office every 15 days and then go back and work from home. So that has kind of made it easier for the rest of the people working from home with the team leaders coordinating very closely with them. So yeah, obviously very positive across the last 6 to 7 months.
With that, let's dive straight into today's topic of discussion. So first, I would like to ask Radhika to provide a brief picture on the key problems of traditional and institutional education and like how India's edtech.
They're having a bad day.
Bad internet data.
Okay, we get back.
Thing is back, yeah.
So I would like to ask Radhika to provide a like wholesome picture of the like the problems faced by traditional and institutional education in India and how the edtech sector is trying to solve it and how it is evolved around it.
Yeah, sure. I don't think I'm qualified enough to provide a wholesome picture. I'll give it my best shot. I think the biggest issue that we see when we look at India as a whole, and you can't, India isn't one market. We always say India is 4 markets. It's 4 kind of users. You have this very, very elite India 1A, Starbucks drinking, Netflix watching set of users. You have an India 1, which is a much larger, still well-to-do, English-speaking, but very aspirational population. Then you have on similar lines India 2 and India 3. India 3 is the largest set of users in terms of number, so that's the largest set of our population. But it's sadly a very small part of our GDP because they tend to be in rural areas. They have very limited tech connectivity, or they're just coming on to digital platforms. They're learning how to use the internet. And the biggest problem that the traditional offline education had was, and there are many purposes, but the biggest in my opinion is there is a serious lack of access of quality across these 4 Indias. So students in India 3 cannot access the same kind of teaching, learning, testing, and hence the same kind of life outcomes, whether it's jobs or even social capital, as users in tier 1, 2, 3, tier 1A, 1 and 2. When the moment you move from offline education to online education, the one thing you're able to at least democratize is access to the quality. So at least I can take that same teacher, put them on an online platform, whether it's as something as basic as a YouTube, or it's a Entri or EduRev or Unacademy, and have them teach people across the country. There is again an affordability issue. There is an issue of devices, but at least it increases the expanse of who all that teacher can cover. So I think that's the biggest problem that online education is able to solve in India. Of course, many smaller problems here and there. Happy to kind of go into the detail, but in the interest of time, that's the biggest one: is access to the quality of teachers and teaching, which is what online education is solving.
Yeah, right. We can say that if 2010 was the decade of e-commerce, 2020 is gonna be for the same for edtech. So
bigger,
I think
no? Much bigger. Where, if my numbers serve me correctly, we're maybe 1/50th of the China market in terms of the number of e-commerce transactions that happen in India every day. We're maybe 1/10th of China and edtech. And sadly, maybe for many years we can't be as big as they are. But edtech is much, much bigger in India than e-commerce is, or perhaps can be, because edtech is where we as Indians have a ability and willingness to spend. We have a very "my child is better than me" phenomena as a feeling as Indians, as Asians in general. So edtech is going to be much bigger.
Yeah. So now for Kunal and Hisam, how has the user behavior and demand changed in your areas of focus recently, due to the pandemic, and also how you have adjusted in trying to address them?
Okay, I think the user behavior, I think in terms of numbers, I think as Sam was mentioning, we have also seen almost 3 to 4x kind of a jump compared to where we were in February. And in terms of behavior, obviously they are more sticky. A lot of principals have called us up. They want to do something with us right now. It was the other way around. We used to approach them and we used to say, hey, let's do something together. Like today, they're like, hey, my teacher is scared of doing an online class. I can't, they're a bit worried that the parent is looking and they don't want to do this right away. And can you do something for us? Can you just probably, share your lectures with our students and then, make some assignments and do something around that. So I think there's a fundamental shift happening. Schools opening up to edtech solutions is it's a very, it is pretty obvious. One would think that, hey, schools should be pro edtech, but they are not. If you go to a lot of schools, most of them are very resistant. They teachers think that it's like the 1960s or 70s. And though it is true to a certain extent, but they feel that tech is going to replace all their jobs. So that's the biggest fear. Teachers are anti-tech because of this reason. Now that they're sitting at homes and they are not able to deliver the quality that they want to deliver, or it's not engaging enough. Now they're a bit more open, and conducive to adopting edtech solutions. So I think that's a great thing that we are seeing right now. And I think this opens up a lot of things. edtech can do a lot of from right. So if you're in a school today, right, you can't. I can't give you too much data about the student. But if you're studying on a platform, I can tell you so much about the student in probably 3 months or 6 months than in the total data the school has. So this is going to change a lot of things. I think we're going to maybe in 5 or 10 years down the line, employers would look at the data of edtech platforms and judge a candidate, because they would understand that what was their inclination, how they would have been performing, and not at the the macro numbers like what was my score in class 10 boards, or what was I scoring, what was my CGPA at the end of my college. This is a more detailed and a more interesting kind of more psychology based analysis that an employer can also do. So I think this opens up the floodgates for edtech to really revolutionize what is happening. and we are glad to be, we are fortunate, as Sam was mentioning, to be at this point and what we are building right now.
Yeah, kind of same with us. I mean, the engagement rates has gone up. So one trend that like quickly emerged was like the government ordering coaching institutes closed down. So what we saw was even users who thought that who had this myth inside their mind that online education was not meant for them, like was forced to kind of look for online options. And like once they got hold of online options, they soon figured out that this is far better than like what used to get offline, right? So, and like when compared to learning outcomes as well as the price line. So, for example, a student would had to pay like 10,000, 50,000 rupees at a coaching institute, and they would get the same set of courses for around 1,500, 2,000 rupees on entry, right? So that shift happened very fast over the first 3 months of lockdown, and even after what I believe is even after the lockdowns, a lot of them won't go back to those coaching institutes because they've come to Entri or any other online platforms and realize that they're getting access to the best teachers across India or across that particular state or across that particular language. And obviously at like 1/5 or 1/10 of the cost they used to pay at these coaching institutes. So they won't go back. I'm pretty sure about that. It's kind of a disruption of these coaching institutes that's happening right now. And for us specifically, we had to do some like tweakings, especially around pricing, because the demographic that we're targeting are job seekers and people were losing jobs. So we had to bring prices down but that also kind of translated into like much more number of subscriptions sold every month. So we were selling around 2,500 to 3,000 subscriptions every month. Beginning of this year, right now we're selling anywhere between 10,000 to 15,000. So the average order value went down, but the total revenue actually increased 3x times. So that was a major shift that we had to do. I mean, like considering the situation, but like overall, yeah, the numbers have gone up. The engagements have gone up as
well. It's like good for everyone, I think. So like Radhika, in what aspects can the experience of studying online can be made much better, especially for students? Like in the school, there is a very systematic way of going forward. So how it can be made better at online level?
I think we lost Radhika.
Yeah.
I think Radhika ma'am lost her connection. Anyone can take. Kunaal sir or Mohammed sir.
Can you repeat the question, please?
So like in what aspects can the experience of studying online can be made better, especially for students? Like in schools, we have a very systematic way of going forward. How it can be made better in the online mode?
I think it can be better in like 100 ways from what I believe. For a very fundamental example is if a teacher is teaching a class, in an offline way, they have done that class so many times, and it's not their best performance. It's something that they have been repeating over and over again, and it's it's not your optimized version of it. But in terms of a video, it's super, or maybe I'm not sure of a live class, but maybe in terms of a video, you can definitely deliver your best performance. You can edit it out. You can put up some, visual aids. You can put up some graphics and all that, and the level becomes, much more engaging, and I learn in a much better way. For an example, so we had a teacher who was teaching, in a tier 3 area, and he had a lot of students for physics. He used to teach like almost 500 or 1,000 odd students every year. And so he used to teach in an offline way. And then, for a change, he said, and he was doing well. So he thought that, and he was a young guy, he was like in 35, 40, something like that. So he said that, I want to do something, a little bit more innovative and with today's age. So I would record all the lectures of mine in a video format. And instead of teaching, live over there, I would play those videos in the class. And then probably I'll take the doubts. So, and then the students were super happy because so he used some animations, he brought stuff out, and he said the 90 minutes lecture was compressed down to 25 minutes. In 25 minutes, he was able to deliver a much better performance as compared to what he was doing in 90 minutes. And the students had the option of going back and maybe coming on a platform and checking those videos out and learning from there. So it's a fundamentally different experience. So that's how tech can be leveraged in the traditional system today. So that's one example. I think Hisam can add a few more, I'm sure.
Sure. So I think, as Kunaal mentioned, I mean, there are like 100 different things that an online platform can do when compared to a traditional education institute. So one thing, like specific example that we did was like we had this rank prediction feature where we kind of aggregated all the rank data of previous years, and like kind of based on the mock exam mark that they got, we actually predicted what rank they would get and where they would get a government job, like which department or which district according to the categories they were present. So lot of things that we can do on top of data, and I think it's all happening organically since there is like a heavy competition between different startups. Students are like more demanding, and there are like more features being built for these students organically, and I think that's a healthy way to do it.
Yeah, and what Hisamuddin mentioned, we are able to like with every test that you give or every element that you're studying or every question that you attempt, you keep on understanding your strengths and weaknesses. So that helps you, maybe in 3 months, 6 months down the line, you can probably look back at it and revise in a better manner. You can pick up your weak areas and just focus on them before the exam, and we can give you recommendations which are directly suited for you instead of what is happening in the offline system today.
Yeah, right. So indeed, it can be helpful to students in a much more greater way than the traditional education. So like Radhika, in the past 24 months, in a report, it was there around 450 new edtech startups have won. So you must have come across many of them. So like how you or in particular Blume look for in these startups before investing in the edtech space? Like what do you look in those startups before investing?
Yeah, so yeah, that's true. The number of edtech startups that have been coming, in general, the early stage investments have completely risen. So while edtech isn't the only sector I look at, it's probably 80% of my time, which is crazy. No one sector should be 80% of my time. I think in terms of what we look at, so we're also in terms of our past investments, we have already invested in several areas in edtech. So we don't, of course, invest in those areas again. So we are investors in Unacademy. We don't invest in test prep again because it's a conflict for us. But keeping that aside, I think the main thing that any VC is looking for is what is the consumer problem? How are you specifically solving that consumer problem and creating consumer delight? How are you creating value and then capturing the larger market of value that you're creating? And also, how are you different from all the other edtech companies that are in the market right now? Very interesting trend that's coming around is just given how frothy edtech is, several very, very pedigreed founders, whether it's second-time founders or CXOs of large unicorn companies, are now stepping down from their earlier positions to start edtech companies. So the quality of edtech pipeline is also better than ever. So for us, it's to some extent a bit of a blind bet. And to a large extent, winning in edtech is about CAC reduction. CAC is cost of customer acquisition. So it's about how strategic is the founder in terms of thinking of unique ways of acquiring a customer. How are you thinking of retaining a customer? It's as much of a marketing and customer retention problem as of an education problem from an investor lens. So there are several ways at how we look at edtech companies competing against each other.
Thanks, Radhika. I'm back. I'm sorry I faced power cut right when it started. It doesn't happen very often. So let us continue. So for Kunaal and Hisam, on a similar note, why and how you chose the edtech sector and decided the particular problem to focus on, and what made you different from other startups in the similar space? Kunaal, you can start.
Yeah, sure. I think from an impact standpoint, I think it's you want to do things which impact in a greater way, right? So if you look at the impact of edtech, it can impact maybe 20 years or 25 years of somebody's life, and that's kind of cool. If we do this right, for all the formative years, we can fundamentally change how they learn, and we can impart them better learning. They would be happier learners. They would, get out better jobs. They would be able to perform their jobs in a better way. So I think that's something which is pretty exciting for me, for sure. And how are we different? I think there are multiple ways that we look at it, and from looking at how we are acquiring content. So we are not really creating a lot of content on our own. We are not super bullish on live classes today, which I think Radhika might not really agree with. And I think other than that, the way we are doing the UX, I think it's like AME, using AME today. I think we use Zoom calls all the time. So the kind of experience you get while you learn, when you are on a maybe on a WhatsApp call or a Hangout call versus a Zoom call. So that experience is something that we're trying to make better. When you're learning on EduRev, you would feel happier or more satisfied, and we're coming with a completely new version of the experience that we're delivering. And I think the quality that we want to deliver today, and also the price point. I think like right now it is too expensive. I think people delivering it at 30,000, 40,000 rupees is like not fair. I think the way internet is and the way we can leverage the economies of scale, the cost can come down like really low. So I think we want to be that player. We want to provide you the best quality of education that you can ever get in like an under $50 kind of number, and per year. So that's I think how we are building it up.
Right. So yeah. So I think yep. The reason that we kind of started Entri was like from the problems that me and my co-founder faced. So we were all a part of coaching institute before, right? And for engineering, and we kind of saw the problems firsthand that happened and inside a coaching institute where like 60, 70 students were there, and like only 5 to 10 students actually benefited from the teaching and learning experience there. So we actually set out with a different product initially. We started with a B2B dashboard for teachers and students at a coaching institute. We could not scale it up. We ran for 2 years. We had 3,000 students, 150 teachers using it. Could not scale it up, and that's when we experimented with this local language learning course for government job exams in Kerala, in Malayalam. And we soon figured out that there were like different local language exams happening across India: Tamil, Kannada, Telugu, and Hindi. We scaled to those languages as well. And we also figured out that only 1.5 to 2% of all the people that take a government job exam actually get it. It's very, very competitive. So the rest are already looking for a private job, and they want a better private job. That's why you start working on upskilling on like spoken English, accounting courses, sales, customer care courses as well. So right now, Entri is a platform where users can come and consume content in their own mother tongue, either to get a government job or a private job. So right now, we're a learning app to get a job. So that's what we call ourselves. So to give you an example, there are 400 million people in India who are looking to upskill in their own language, who are not efficient with English, to get a better paying job. It could be a government job or it could be a private job. And that's the market that we're targeting. And I think we're doing something unique there, and we're doing really fast.
Great. And I would want to ask, now that there are so many startups in the edtech space, very fast growing, and so how would you suggest new founders to acquire the initial first customers, how to gain users trust and credibility, and added to that, how do you suggest monetizing the product and deciding a pricing point?
Yeah, I think I would not for new founders. I would not recommend them to scale super fast. I think that's a bad move, and you can't come back from there. And I think the same goes for monetization. Don't try to monetize or don't try to scale this up too quickly, because you would come on a path that you cannot return from, and your burns would go high. You would not be optimized. So I would tell them to do it in a slow pace. Try to get like 100 people to just use your product, build up a good thing, and don't try to do too much. I think the MVP advice comes over here. Just build up a simple thing that you think is like really useful, and just try to get like 100 people or 1,000 people to use it on a regular basis. And once they have like a good, love, and maybe you can measure the NPS scores among them. And once I think that has happened, then probably go towards, scaling it up. And I think the kind of market this is, I think it's not too difficult to scale this up. I think there's a lot of these are like 400 million students in India right now, and that's like a pretty large number. That's probably larger than the population of most of the country. So don't worry about the market size. Don't worry about the number of people there. I think if you build something just truly great and which people really love, I think the other part is still solvable for. So yeah, I think my advice is don't try to focus too much on monetization today. Just try to focus on what you're building, and also don't try to scale it up too early. So that's, I think, how I would take it. How I would start up today.
Yeah, so I am on the same page there. So I think especially if someone's starting an edtech startup these days, they'll be overwhelmed by the huge players in the market right now. So I think the good thing about India is even if you take a segment, small segment, there'll be the TAM would be really, really high. Right? So, for example, how we started in Kerala, we only focused on this exam called LDC, Lower Division Clerk exam that used to happen in Malayalam. And there were like 25 lakh people taking that exam in Kerala, right? So we only focused on that and built a product, really, really good product for that. So to give you an example, Unacademy was also in that space, but they're still there. And we actually kind of outcompeted them in that particular course, right? In that particular exam. And then we became really good that particular category. And then we took it step by step. After that, we launched other languages. So the bottom line here is just focus on one small segment and become the best in that. And even if there are like bigger players there, you can do it, right? So just take a small segment, and it will be like the good thing about India is that in itself will be like 25 or 30 lakh people.
I think also just to add to what Kunaal and Hisam said, I think edtech is, as they said, edtech is so vast in India that it's not like all the problems of consumers have been solved. So there are several gaps in the market that still exist. It's a complete myth that edtech is saturated. It's not, and I don't think it'll ever be. There'll always be gaps to solve. There'll always be picks and shovels to solve for. A decade back, people said the same thing about Fitchi and Akash. That how do you compete against massive giants like that have massive brands, trusted brands, and what ended up competing against them was effectively a YouTube channel, which is now Unacademy. So the unicorn of tomorrow's edtech will look like something that no edtech company looks like today. I agree with Kunaal that don't worry about monetization right now. In edtech, if you're solving a core need of learning and hence the outcome, people will pay. It might just come late, people will pay.
Yeah, right. And I think there's a whole market of like SaaS thing happening, which is available for edtech. Like people look at SaaS, I think a lot of small things can be done for edtech, and all of them can be super valuable. So maybe just think on those lines.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. So there is still many untapped opportunities in the space, as you mentioned. And I would also like to know your thoughts on the recent new changes made to the educational policy. How do you think it's going to affect the overall ecosystem, and also particularly startups in the next 5 or so years? You can start with Radhika, and also like if you can compare it to other countries, maybe that would be good.
Yeah, sure. I think so. NEP is very interesting. The first thing to remember about it is it's not a law. It's not compulsory. NEP is in effect guidance, and it's guidance that is supposed to happen over the next decade or so. So it's not like there's going to be a switch button and today it's like this and tomorrow it becomes like that. It's going to be a slow process. But I think broadly NEP is in the direction that the country was already going in. So the biggest change in our opinion is talking more about K-12. Of course, there's lots of change in the higher education space in terms of how universities get accredited, etc., for online degrees. But in K-12, what's interesting is last 2 years or so, there's been a lot of push for non-curricular learning. So whether it's White Hat, whether it's Open House, so many such platforms, Camp K-12, that have suddenly taken off. Parents are paying. They've demonstrated incredible ability to go global and get more than 50% revenue from abroad. So broadly, that same change is what the NEP is also going to accelerate. The way we see it is, if coding is the new math, critical thinking is the new English. So if parents were obsessive about math 5 years back, then those same parents are being obsessive about coding. And leaving aside this very recent debate that kids shouldn't be coding, kids should be playing video games or reading or whatever. It's not about that. It's also about how can you make your child more creative? How can you make the child stand out? How can you make them enjoy the learning process? And a lot of startups had already started doing that before NEP came in. So I think NEP is going to be great for that entire set of co-curricular, extracurricular startups in general. And also helping parents who were perhaps on the fringe of whether or not to pay for services like that, solutions like that, will encourage them to pay for it more. And of course, the higher education space is now completely opened up. Very, very exciting changes there. A little bit closer to the US market in some sense, but I think the more important thing for us to remember as a edtech ecosystem is it's not just about giving out degrees. What is that degree achieving for your learner? we're a country where we have far more graduates graduating every year than the number of white-collar jobs. It's a very small fraction of the number of graduates every year. Sorry to the entire student population that's listening to this today. So it's important to create those outcomes also, which I think the one mistake that the US is making is they're giving out these online degrees, but the outcomes aren't being created as much. That's the one I think kind of red herring for us, is to make sure that the outcomes in terms of jobs, further learning, better salaries are also all being created for the learner.
Right. I think I agree with Radhika. I think this is a good, I think this isn't the final thing, and this isn't something which is going to, like disrupt everything, but I think it is a step in a good direction. What is going to happen from here is look at your batch. I'm pretty certain if you look at your alumni, a lot of them in IIT Guwahati, most of, even if they've done electrical engineering, they're not really working in that area. So like today, what is being taught versus what is required in the market is very different. And I think our education system is coming from a very old, like a factory, or from a colonial kind of an era where they wanted people to work in the factories, right? They wanted like even I was reading. I think there was this TED video I was watching that, and there was this I think Ken Robinson. So he said that the bell thing, the bell that rings in the school comes from the factory thing. That's how they wanted to you to be trained whenever the bell rings, so that you are mentally trained according in that manner. So I think we have somehow not evolved too much from that, and this is a time that it is happening finally. So I think that is a very welcome step. And I think this would start in 3-5 years. You would start seeing it more. People like Lambda School, people like Pesto, all these people are coming up and teaching you skills that are needed, and they're getting you the outcome, as Radhika mentioned. They're getting you jobs, and like even Hisam, they also, as he mentioned about his app, he says that it is an app to get you a job, right? So he is talking about the outcome right away, and that's what when you are in the industry, when you are talking to people who are hiring. So that is what you learn. That's there's a big difference between what is being taught versus what is required. So this is definitely a step in that direction, and I think good things are going to happen from here.
Right. So adding to those points, so I think one important thing that I noticed was like the relevance, like importance of local languages. So I think the NAP places a lot of importance on local languages. I mean, even in schools or even like graduate levels, where students will have the option of taking graduation programs in their own mother tongues. I think it's very important. So what we have kind of figured out is when students get learning content in their own mother tongue, they grasp it better than when compared to English. So I think that will lead to actually more people completing their degree courses. So a lot of people, especially in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities in India, face difficulties while studying in English. So having access to subjects in their own local language, mother tongue, like Hindi, Malayalam, Tamil, Kannada, etc., will result in more people actually graduating.
Right. Very good to hear that you're all very bullish about the decision and its scope. And I would like to ask Kunaal and Hisam, as they both don't make their content for their platform, how do you ensure the quality of it? And also Hisam, like when you add a new curriculum or a language, so how do you make sure the quality doesn't take a hit?
Right. I think it is relatively being in the online domain or being in a tech space, it is easier to understand the metrics. So obviously we have we only tie up with people who are like really good at what they do, and even after that there's a whole from retention to repeat to time spent. All these factors help you in understanding the quality of the content. So, and we can judge about that on a mass perspective. And then again, the people who are teaching, so you have the bandwidth to spend, right? You get only, and it's not it's not like school, right? That a teacher has to teach for 8 hours a day. This is a limited time that I need them for, and ready to pay them like much higher, and we're able to get like really good teachers because of that reason. So I think that's pretty much that in a nutshell.
Sure. So we have how we produce content inside Entries. We have this crowdsourced content generation platform that we done in house, where like there are like freelance experts working. So we so we have academic heads, and then under them we have these freelance experts who kind of creates questions based on the guidelines that these academic experts create. And we have like a set of quality checks through a different set of experts. And once it becomes live on the app or platform, the students also have an option to report a mistake, etc. Right? So that's how, I mean, so it's almost impossible to make sure that without the students' involvement of like bringing up like 100% accuracy with the questions. So with students reporting, I think we have an accuracy rate of around 99.9%. Students reporting it and going back to the system, and then the set of freelance experts fixing it.
Okay, so next I would like to ask, how has teaching as a career changed now, as most things are going online? So there are the new content creators who maybe are pursuing it as a side hobby and as such, and the school teachers who now have to compete a lot more. And so, like, any behavioral change you may have observed, and how can they now cope up with these changes?
I think a lot of people are picking up teaching, and that's a good thing. A lot of people who would not have taught in a school because of maybe the way a school works, or the kind of salaries you make while working in a school, that was a deterrent for a lot of highly qualified people to come up and teach. Now that that thing is gone, now that the salaries are good enough from even if you're working in MNC at a good position, versus if you're a teacher on a platform like the ones that we are having, or maybe something like Unacademy, these people. So that's something which is at par, and that parity has helped out a lot of really smart people to come up and teach. So that's I think a good thing. I think it's a good change that is happening.
Right, I think that's very interesting. I mean, so I think for the first time we are having a teacher celebrity. So we used to have like sports celebrities, we have to have movie celebrities. Right now, since teaching is going online, we are having these like star teachers who used to teach for 100 students are like being able to reach to like 1 lakh and like 1 million students. So that's and we are in that process. We are creating teacher celebrities right now, who I think for the first time are getting paid really, really well, right? So I think there are like good sides and like downsides to it as well. I mean, like, so I think there will be like a top 10% of the teacher population will be like earning really, really well, and then there'll be like maybe 30 or 40% actually losing jobs because of everything coming online. But I think for teachers to cope better, everyone has to have an online presence. Maybe start with the YouTube channel, or like target only local place, etc. But yeah, so I think there is an interesting change happening there.
Right. Also, a follow up on that. So, like earlier, teaching was used to be looked as a hyper local and more of a relationship and trust building job. So, how do you see that when a single teacher caters to a huge amount of students?
I think that's going to be, I think we all do understand to a certain extent that great teachers will, become like super great. They would accumulate a lot of wealth. I was reading about this teacher in US. He teaches geography, and he's done so well for himself that he has got ownership in a team. That's how well they're doing, and that's that is the potential of it. So the great teachers will increase their reach. They'll be able to reach out to a lot more people, and the hyperlocal thing would go away. Instead of teaching like 1,000 students a year, I would be able to teach maybe 10,000 or even 1 million students from like really good. So that's something which is going to be there. Sadly, to a certain extent, I think the teachers who are average, it would be difficult for them to survive. And that's more like a Darwin thing coming out over here, that the best would really keep on getting better and better, and they would make a lot more money. But I think a lot of average teacher jobs might go away, and that's, I think, maybe a downside that we might see out of this.
Yeah, nothing to add from my side. I think Kunaal covered it really nicely.
Sorry, I missed the question because my internet is massively misbehaving.
It's a day of bad internet.
Yeah. So
it's a day of bad internet.
What I asked was, teaching as a career has changed, and it was looked upon as more of a hyper local and relationship building activity and that kind of job. but now everything going online and teachers can cater to a lot more students. How do you see that changing?
So I missed the question but heard Kunal's answer, and that kind of sums up pretty much the entire spectrum of how it's changed. I think the one interesting opportunity area that we now see from at least an investor lens is teacher training will become very, very important going forward. Because I think as Kunal also mentioned, teachers will need to be, while they're not being replaced, some of their skills will have to be slightly altered. So you need to be far more tech savvy. You need to also think about how the student is consuming information or doing testing online, and that needs a slightly different skill set, or slightly upgraded skill set. So teacher training becomes very important. At the same time, it also becomes a great monetary opportunity because you have players like Byju's, Unacademy, Vedantu that are competing for teachers. Teachers are now like superstars almost. So the way we used to have talent agencies for movie stars or models like Kwan earlier, we're now beginning to see similar agencies that for teachers now. And I think that's going to be a very interesting opportunity area going forward.
All right, so we also have a few questions from the audience. I'll try and pick them up, which I found interesting. So Sanjay asks, personalization plays a huge role in edtech. So how are you approaching it for Kunal and Hassan?
Sorry, I didn't get that. Can you please repeat that?
Personalization plays a huge role in edtech. So how do you take that into account?
Okay. Yeah, I think this can give. So I think so. There, I'll talk about both the pros of a classroom and the pros of an online thing. Personalization can happen to a very detailed level, as I was even mentioning before. That I can understand you in a very deep way. I can understand your weakness and I can understand your strengths in a way a classroom could never. A teacher has like 50 students that they're teaching at the same point of time. It's not possible for them to really understand each of them while they're learning. I can understand how much of a video are you watching, what are you engaged in, what kind of videos do you like, what kind of tests you're attempting, if you're scoring well on those tests or not. I can keep on customizing your paths for you. I can keep on telling you better things about you, and I can make you teach in a much more personalized way than the offline classroom can. On the contrary, I think there's a personal touch and an interaction, right, which you need as I think we're all, as we read in like class 8, class 9 social, right, we're all like man is a social animal, right? So we need to really have a human interaction to a certain extent. We need to talk to the teacher. We need to really meet them once in a while, and that makes it more lively. So I think that's one plus point for the classroom versus. But I think there are like a lot of pros, and the kind of personalization you can do on online is like far greater. So I think that might prevail as we go forward.
Right, I agree to that. I mean, basically, there are like most of the edtech startup that does these days. I mean, obviously, customized tests for each student based on their weakness, strengths, etc. Apart from that, I mean, I think especially during these days, as Kunaal mentioned, there needs to be like some like real human element to add to that as well. So, for example, one thing that we do in the Entri is anyone they can come and consume content inside Entri, and anyone who wants like a one-to-one mentorship, etc. We have a gold program where they can tap onto a mentor, like a spoken English mentor or a government job expert, etc. So that he also gets personal attention. So I think it's important to have a hybrid mode, especially in the future where they might not at all interact with a mentor going forward. If they don't visit a coaching institute, they'll only be consuming content, pre-recorded classes or like mock exams, intelligent mock exams. So there needs to be a human touch, and I think technology can do that more efficient than a traditional institute as well.
Yeah, no, I think Kunaal and Hisam's covered pretty much echo this.
Sameer asks, how do you think the edtech sector will affect the poorer section of the country, and how you can tackle the problem faced by the same? And so I would add a bit. So the next billion users that are coming online, how would they go for the K-12 sector and also for the studying for their jobs? Radhika, if you can start.
Yeah, so I think kind of alluding again to the thing I mentioned earlier of India 1, 2, 3, I think for the middle income India, it's been great. Because you're solving for access to quality, and they don't have they all have access to a device with internet, courtesy the really cheap internet that India has. So for the middle income India, it's been a boon. You're able to access the same kind of features. You're able to spend a lot more time with better content, better testing. At the same time, it's creating a much wider divide for the lowest set of income users in India, which is at India tier 3, because there's many of them don't have devices. There is serious broadband restrictions there. There is a key affordability issue. So there is a bit of a divergence there. So middle income is rising up, but the overall gap is actually increasing. And there are plays that we're seeing that are catering to rural users, catering to the set of users that really can't afford edtech or offline forms of education, but they're struggling on the monetization front. And that is unfortunately one set of users that don't have an ability to pay. So willingness is a much later question. We're yet to see an effective solution, to be honest, to help those set of users. I know that Daily Learn is doing some very interesting work there. I haven't scaled up to that extent though for us to see massive impact. But we haven't seen any very effective solution at scale yet for tier 3 users yet. So it's not been COVID in that sense. It's definitely increased the overall gap.
So Harshit has a question for Kunal. He asks, EduRev has grown organically to millions of users in a short span of time. How did you reach the first 100 users, and what are your thoughts on the extensive advertising and sales strategies followed by some startups?
I think it was serendipity, the way we got our 100 users. It was not something which we were expecting. As Hisam was mentioning, we were also doing something very different before this. We had something of a B2B focus. We were trying to help out teachers in delivering the solutions better. We put out some content from those teachers who were good. And, we saw a lot of traction coming on that. And that was something which we found a little odd and also exciting at the same point of time. And that people were consuming that content and they were coming on a platform. We had a more of a B2B approach or a B2B2C approach. And then from there on, we saw a lot of, influx happening for B2C on its own. So then we pivoted to a certain extent and we went into a B2C direction. So it's not that, I would say we were absolutely lucky to get our initial users, and they basically guided us to build what we are building today. It was, somehow not, I think it's not my brainchild or our brainchild. It is what the people wanted, what the students were suggesting, what the data was suggesting, what the feedbacks were suggesting. And that's how we kept it on building it organically. And I think that went into a good direction. We started putting out more content. That got us a lot of SEO. People started searching on Google and they found our content. Then this content was good. They started sharing it with their friends. So then that became a loop as well. So we got more referrals. And from those, the initial 100 or 1,000 people who were coming on the platform, we are like 3-4 million today. And without any marketing or advertising. I think it is nothing. There's nothing wrong in advertising or marketing. The only thing is that we should do it at the right time. I think if you have found out your PMF, if you're happy with how the people are behaving on your platform, if your NPS score is good enough and all those things are happening in the right direction, I think it is a good point to start scaling it up. But before that, I think it is not a good idea. Like, back in the day, if an ad used to come on the TV, they used to say, hey, this is advertisement worthy. Now that they're ready, it is now coming on the TV, So that is how they approached it. And I think that's the right way to do it. I think if your product is ready, if you are ready to scale it out, you should market it, and there's nothing wrong in that. But before that, I think it is not a very good idea, because you'll burn money. People will say bad things about you. And it might backfire as well, like what is happening with White Hat today. So you just need to be careful about that.
True. And like your journey has been great. And so there are many questions on a similar thought process, which is how would the typical classroom experience look post pandemic? And so basically, how would offline and online merge to provide a better experience at school? Radhika, you can.
Yeah, I think when we think of, we've debated this internally a lot about how things will go back post-COVID, because we have investments in so many different areas of edtech that it's very relevant to us as a fund. And our expectation is that things will go back in a very hybrid model. So while a lot of the core curriculum teaching, that 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. kind of teaching, will go back to schools, but we'll have digital traces remaining. So things like homework assignments may still remain online. Even things like picks and shovels, right? So even parent-teacher meetings might become online. So all those very critical friction areas that schools always had are likely to go online. There is going to be a much, Kunal mentioned earlier that schools don't like it because they operate in the 1960s. And that's so true. And I think that's why building B2B education businesses in India, either selling to schools or colleges, used to be so hard. But we see that changing post-COVID. We see a higher adoption towards tech because they've had to adopt tech. So it's a slightly coerced adoption that's now going to hopefully lead to continued usage. So we're going to see digital traces. A lot of it will go back. The other thing that we expect to see is schools that are now in a big financial crunch because they were paying out salaries but not receiving student fees, which is their equivalent of revenue. We'll need to start capitalizing also on that 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. slot. So you think of a child's day, they go to school, they come back, and 3 to 5 p.m. is very interesting. That's when they do their studying, their homeworks, and also extracurricular classes. So money is being spent on that 3 to 5 p.m. slot. So we see schools looking at how they can also offer services to monetize that slot. And that's likely to also be online, but via the school. So that's a broad change that we're expecting.
Out of context, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. Hisam, I had a question for you. So I think Radhika mentioned a little earlier that India 3 is something which is not monetizable, but the kind of product that you're building, right? That is, I think that might just be hitting India 3, right?
Yes, very relevant. So basically, what we have kind of figured out, since we are specifically a platform that helps users get a job, I think if there is one investment that any unemployed guy or a job seeker wants to do is to get a better job or get a new job, right? So in our case, we're very fortunate to be in that sector, and like people are like borrowing money from their parents or like taking a loan. We have EMI options these days for higher ticket prices, etc. So they're paying for us. I mean, so that's what one trend that we're seeing, and I think there is a trend change happening there as well, especially when it comes to paying online or subscribing online, because of the large companies like Swiggy, Amazon, Flipkart. Everyone's like familiar with paying at one online player already, and like obviously UPI, Geo Internet Penetration, everything helping. But bottom line is like these job seekers are ready to pay. They're already spending like around $50 to $75 on like textbooks, guidebook, like coaching, spoken English institutes, etc. And they're ready to like pay a small ticket size, and which is that's why we will like have a very sensitive pricing on Entri. We initially try to charge a minimum, and then like a percentage of that converts to like a premium gold plan. So yeah, people are paying.
All right, thank you.
There's a question not related to edtech, but I'll still address it. So Nufal asks what are the problems you guys have faced while onboarding new employees remotely, and also about less experienced people. How do you make sure they fit into the work?
I think it's a pain. I would rather do it offline. It's not the same. I think you need to really meet people. You need to really talk to them. I think then it's only that's the right way to do it. But yeah, I think we have been trying to do more calls. I think we are scheduling more Zoom calls. I don't think people appreciate. I don't know whether they appreciate it or not. But we have been trying to do some meetups within the company, trying to gel up other people from different departments and try to see what kind of thing comes out. But to say it is optimized or we have found out a great solution, I don't think we have. And I think maybe Sam or Radhika can answer this more.
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, it's like actually got better, especially like I agree with Kunal when like for like leadership roles, etc. We have to like meet in person, etc. But when it comes to sales roles or a growth role, I think the options are like a lot these days. I mean, like people are jobless, and like as soon as we post a job posting, we get like hundreds of resumes, and we have set up a process where like we do multiple rounds and like make sure that the guy is pretty good. We give them tasks, etc., which they have to complete before we actually hire them. So for us, like again, like not leadership roles, but like every other role, I think it is not easier. Leadership roles is again, I mean, ideally we want to meet the guy or girl before we actually hire him or her. But yeah, everything else I think has gotten easier for us. And yeah, no complaints. As I said, I mean, like work from home, they can work from, especially being a local language where we wanted people from different parts of India speaking different languages. That has got really easier for us.
Are you, sorry, one question to Kunal and Hisam. Are you now looking to hire, I think Hisam also mentioned that yes, but are you looking to hire in a more location agnostic way going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are hiring people from across the country. We are not fixed to a certain location. We are thinking of a remote first approach, and I think that is how we are looking to be for a while. I don't know how this would shape up because nobody knows how the pandemic will shape up. But yeah, I think we definitely have a remote first approach, and this would stay. I think the traces of this would also stay for a long time.
Yeah, but we're also seeing very interesting changes. I mean, when I joined Blume, I used to work in a different country at that time, and I flew down after all my interview rounds for one like short lunch, because as Hisam said, they wanted to meet before making an offer. And now we're hiring people without meeting, and there have been cases where someone has been working at Blume for like 6 months, and we've never met them in person. But I think we've, as a fund, very actively trying to do like virtual coffee chats and virtual events to have the person as integrated into the team as possible. It also helps it with just 20 people, so it's much easier for us to do than for an org that's much bigger. Startups tend to have more people than just 20 once they scale, so it's easier for us than for most other orgs.
Yeah, I think even for investment, I think Sam would also agree. So I think we raised a round sometime back, and we did not meet a single investor. It was all through Zoom calls. I haven't met I think most of them in person till date. So, and I think we raised money from across the planet more or less. We have investors from different parts of the from the world coming up. So I think that's definitely a welcome change for sure.
Yeah, raised from home is the new word for founders these days.
Right.
Okay, so there's a question that asks, do you believe Indian startups are ready to build edtech products for the world? And so it's like the journey actually started with Tutor Vista and similar platforms building for US, but like Radhika, you might be seeing a lot of startups. So like, what's your overall thoughts on this?
So from a consumer side, edtech is the new e-commerce. From a globalization standpoint, edtech is the new SaaS. Whether it's QMath, you said Tutor Vista, EduRev, I believe, is getting big in China. White Hat, of course, Byju's. I think enough and more Indian startups have proven that India is not their only market. They have an ability to scale across the world. I was watching a Karan Bajaj panel yesterday only, I think, and he said something very interesting. He said, as a founder, I've backpacked abroad, I've worked abroad, so I don't see the world I see the world as very borderless. And people, at the end of the day, want the same thing, which from a learning perspective makes a lot of sense. Ultimately, outcomes people want are very similar around the world. So that makes it easy for people to scale. So I think 100%. I'm now on a hunt to look for edtech products that are built for the globe. And I think that's a big focus area of my work. I think for the next couple of weeks at least is looking at products like that. And that also increases payment ability. That increases the kind of tactics you can work around monetization as well, and create very, very high tech AR, VR enabled kind of products. So 100%. EdTech is the new SaaS for India at least.
Yeah, so there is this saying that if you learn driving in India, you can drive anywhere in the world. So I would say if you build a good enough product for India and with the right kind of customization, work outside as well. Like specifically speaking about Entri, so I think India is like a continent, right? I mean, it's like Europe. So we have different states, which is like small, different countries in Europe with different cuisine, different culture, different language, etc. So specifically speaking from Entri's perspective, so we've already been localizing a lot. I mean, so we're in 5 languages right now. Next would be Marathi and Bengali. So we've been honing this playbook where we had to change like a lot of stuff when we went to a new market. And at the right point of time, we would want to go outside India as well. So yeah, you're already seeing good examples. For example, Whitehat, I think, is making 50% of its revenue from outside India. Byju's obviously is growing like crazy outside India as well. So yeah, why not? I mean, there will be more players going outside of India as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Radhika and Assam. I think Indian education is something which is super tough and hard, and the kind of products we are building is which can only be built in India. But the kind of depth that we are exploring today over here can be appreciated in the US as well, or maybe in the other countries later. So I think we are very well equipped to build out. It will take some time; it will not happen like right away. But I think it's happening with Whitehat and Byju's and other companies. But eventually, a lot of the Indian startups who are doing well over here will start making a dent in the other parts of the planet as well.
That's good to hear. And one question I had for the regarding the unemployment problem in India. So as more and more jobs are being created, yet the demand for them is still way much larger, and we need job creators to bridge the gap. And I wanted to ask about your experience with accelerator programs abroad, and do you think similar platforms rising in India? Kunaal and Hisam.
Yeah, I think in terms of unemployment, again, edtech can definitely solve for it. Looking at like 10 years back or 15 years back, if you had to learn a new skill, you had to go to an offline center, whether it is a college or maybe a coaching or even a school for that matter. Today, all of that can be done on your phone, right? You have basically your whole institute on your phone itself. So that's something which is, I think, solved for to a large extent. I think so. That's definitely there. In India, I think the accelerator programs can work for sure. I think Y Combinator is is getting more deep in India. So what we see in the community aspect, and even when we talk to the partners and all, so they're all very aggressive about India. I think in terms of US, the market is relatively more saturated. The kind of growth we can see in India versus what we can be seeing in the US is very different. So all of them are getting aggressive about India day by day. And I think Indian programs are also there. I think even like Surge started out, right? Sequoia started out a Surge thing, and that is somewhat shaped around the accelerator program like Y Combinator or the others that are going around. So yeah, I think it will come out more and more often.
Yeah, I think adding a point on accelerators, I think especially for a first-time founder, if you can get into a good quality accelerator, I would recommend it actually, because you instantly get access to a network of people, right? So for a first-time founder, it might be kind of difficult to actually figure out stuff initially. So if you there are a lot of accelerators, but like if you believe that this is a good accelerator and your advice is recommending it, I think it's a good idea to actually get into an accelerator. Like you get access to all the network of people around it. So especially for a first-time founder, I think accelerators, a good accelerator is useful.
Yeah, but beware. I think there are good and bad accelerators.
Yeah. So that's a tricky part. I mean, you have to find the right ones.
Yeah, exactly.
So as many of our audience members are students who are startup enthusiasts or founders, I want to ask, what is one piece of unfiltered advice you would like to give them? Something non-obvious and preferably brutal that you don't hear around most often.
Don't do it for like the fame or the trend that is going on. It'll go very, very bad. It's just super hard. It's not as fun as as your story or maybe all of the blogs that are coming out show it. It's a lot of hard work. I think most people would be happier in jobs So unless until you really care about the problem, if it's something that you really feel about and you want to solve it, only then jump into it. But if you are going in for the reasons other than that, probably just wait it out.
Yeah, I'm on exactly the same page as Kunal. It's really hard. I mean, it's going to be harder than what whatever you've done so far. I mean, if you might have cracked into an IIT or you might have completed your engineering, but it's going to be like 10 times or 20 times harder than that. And I would still stay startup. I mean, so if so having this mindset is very important. It's going to be hard. So you have that expectation set right at the beginning, and then I would say, like, even if it's obviously, as Kunaal mentioned, if it's a problem that you faced personally, that's the best way to start. But regardless of you fearing you might fail or win, startup. I think even if you spend 3 or 4 years at a startup, even if your startup fails, it's worth it, because with the kind of experience that you get, you'll easily be able to get a very good job at the end of it, right? So there's no risk. I would say it's very hard, but there's zero risk.
Yeah, I think instead of going for an MBA, go for run your own startup. I think you would learn all that is required. You would see a lot more, and you would have definite skin in the game. So that would make a lot of difference as compared to what you would experience in an MBA. I think Radhika can probably shed some light upon this, that whether one should go for an MBA or run a startup.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree that this is advice is always also given to me. Either work at a startup, ideally at a very early stage startup as a generalist role, chief of staff role, product role, or start your own company. But one piece of advice that I'll add to kind of from what Kunaal said about don't just do it for the fame. I think the one other thing I'll add to that is for those startups that are trying to raise VC funding, really take a minute and question if VC funding is the right kind of funding for your business, because actually that it's a class of capital that only works for a very specific type of companies. But just because it's more talked about and because you get articles written on it and your story and Inquiry 2 will talk about it, a lot of founders want to raise VC funding. So really take a minute and understand that class of capital, what it entails, and whether your business is suited to scale at that level, whether you as a founder want to scale at that speed, and then talk of and then look at if it makes sense.
Yeah, save your company. I think even if you're starting up a company, don't dilute it too early. Like, it's not going to be, if you're doing it for the right reasons, if you're looking at the long-term vision, you would do really well at the end of it if you have equity, with you. So if you can, delay raising funds as much as possible.
All right. So with that, I would like to conclude this session. Thanks all our guests for the insightful discussion. I hope the audience found it as good as I did. In case any of the attendees might want to reach you, what's the appropriate way to do that? Social media or?
I think email would be the best mode. So I think I can share it with you.
Yeah, sure. I can. I think you have my email already. I can post it up on as well. Happy to answer anything that you have.
Yeah, same email. I'll probably reply slowly, but I will reply.
Right. So if you have any of the attendees have any feedback or suggestions, you can mail it on our social handles or mail us at edc@iitg.ac.in. And thank you everyone for joining us on a Sunday evening. We'll be conducting more such sessions. Stay tuned for that. Thanks again, Radhika, Kunaal, and Satija. And Hisam for taking out time to do this.
No problem, man. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Really good to have all of you here.
Bye, Kunaal. Bye, Radhika. Nice meeting you.
Bye. Absolutely. Bye.